My husband told me he wanted an open relationship. I said, okay, but let's set some ground rules first. He agreed immediately, thinking he'd won. What he didn't know is that I'd already hired a forensic accountant. For context, we'd been married 9 years. He's a financial advisor, always traveling for client meetings. Makes good money, or so I thought. We live in a nice suburb, 2-car garage, the whole picture-perfect setup. 3 months ago, I found receipts in his jacket pocket while doing laundry. Hotels in cities he never mentioned visiting. Restaurants with $200 tabs. Jewelry purchases I never received. When I confronted him, he got defensive real quick. Said I was paranoid and controlling. Told me those were client gifts and business dinners. Made me feel crazy for even asking. I let it go, but something felt off. Started paying closer attention to our finances. He always handled the money, said it was his expertise. I trusted him. Stupid, I know, but I noticed our savings account wasn't growing like it should have been. We both make decent salaries, no kids, no major expenses. The numbers weren't adding up. Then last week, out of nowhere, he sits me down all serious. Pours 2 glasses of wine like we're about to have some deep conversation. Says he's been reading about ethical non-monogamy, thinks we should explore it. That our marriage has gotten stale and we need to spice things up. He had this whole speech prepared about honesty and communication and modern relationships. I could see the relief wash over his face when I didn't immediately freak out or start crying. Instead, I took a sip of wine and said, sure, but we need complete financial transparency first. Told him open relationships require total honesty, right? So no hidden accounts, no secret spending, everything out in the open. He looked confused for a second, like that wasn't the response he expected. But then he agreed, said he had nothing to hide and that financial transparency was actually a great idea. That's when I stood up and grabbed the folder I'd been keeping in my home office, placed it on the coffee table between us, told him to open it. His hands were shaking a little as he flipped through the pages. Bank statements showing he'd been funneling $3,000 monthly into a separate account for 2 years. Venmo payments to someone named Sarah with heart emojis and inside jokes. Credit card charges at a fertility clinic downtown under both their names, consultations, and treatment plans, dated back 8 months. His face went completely white. He tried to say something, but no words came out. I let him sit there in silence for a minute, watching him realize I knew everything. Then I told him I'd hired the forensic accountant 6 weeks ago, right after our joint savings seemed light. Asked him if he wanted to explain or if I should just tell him what I found out. He started crying, actual tears. Said Sarah was his coworker, that they'd fallen in love, that he didn't mean for it to happen. Claimed he still loved me but was confused about his feelings. The fertility treatments were because Sarah wanted kids, and he'd been going along with it. He swore he was going to tell me eventually, that the open relationship suggestion was his way of easing into the truth. I asked him about the money, that's when he got quiet. Turns out he'd been taking cash advances on our credit cards I didn't even know existed in my name, forging my signature. The $70,000 missing from our savings had gone to funding his second life with Sarah, paying for her apartment since she couldn't afford rent on her salary, covering the fertility treatments because her insurance wouldn't, even bought her a car last year. He begged me not to tell anyone, said we could work through this, go to counseling, that he'd end things with Sarah immediately, promised he'd pay back every cent. I just sat there watching him fall apart, thinking about how he'd made me feel crazy for 3 months when I knew something was wrong. I told him I'd already filed for divorce and that my lawyer had everything. Turns out Sarah was his coworker, and they'd been trying to have a baby together while I was paying our mortgage alone, but the forensic accountant found he'd been embezzling from client accounts to fund his double life, and his company fired him this morning when I sent them the evidence. He's facing criminal charges, and Sarah left him the second she found out he was broke.